Hey, what's up, guys? So I figured now that everything's done, I had some questions about the hiring process for the railroad. So every railroad's hiring process is a little different. Depends on what class of railroad you're going for, class three or class one. Your class three railroads, which are your short line railroads, um, may have a little bit of a different hiring process. That might be like a regular job application process that you would do for any other typical job. Class one hiring process is a little bit different. So your class threes, again, they're categorized as short lines. Now, don't let that name fool you. Some class three railroads may only have 3 or 4 miles of track. Some class three railroads may have 350 miles of track on their system. The class is kind of defined by what their car load is per year. And if it's under a certain threshold, I don't know how many thousands of cars it is a year to cross the threshold from class three to class one. Um, that's how you're kind of categorized, and it also depends on what kind of um, district that you have, track and stuff like that. Now with class ones, they're your big ones. You're doing a few 100,000 cars a year, um, interstate, from state to state, all over the place. And right now, Norfolk Southern, we have just under 20,000 miles. Yeah, 20,000 miles of track. So a lot of track. Um, but so with your class three railroads, you're going to have a typical job interview, process that you would at any other job. Submit your medical background, probably do a drug test, and then you're hired or you're not. And typically you'll start right away, within a week or two. Now, with the class ones, I'm going to go over the process that I went through for Norfolk Southern. It's a completely different animal. So to start off with, obviously you'll look at, and again, this is for operations too. So it might be a little different for other categories of positions, like if you're in maintenance department, or if you're going into like more of a office job, stuff like that. But this is going to be solely for the hiring process for operations, for getting into being a conductor. So first, you're obviously going to see, the job posting up for conductor. You're going to read through it, and they're going to pretty much put everything out there right in front, for you to read about what it's going to be like. And you apply, you make a profile on the company's site, put in all your demographics, where you're from, all that good stuff, all the typical stuff that you would put on any job application, and submit your resume. If they like your resume and they feel like they want to show any type of interest in you, they'll extend an invitation to the next step of the process. Now, some people will ask me, what kind of resume do they like to look at? What kind of stuff is good to have on there as previous experience? To be honest with you, I don't know, because there's guys in my class that have zero prior experience. They were from the warehouse or the industry side, the workforce. Myself and another guy were the only two in my class that had prior railroading experience. So I think what they like to see is previous history in jobs that involved managing, that involved organization, that involve like critical thinking and stuff like that, because they're all attributes to the job as a conductor. You have to be well organized, you have to be able to think clearly, you have to be able to process things, and so on and so forth. So if I was a railroad looking for conductors, that's who I would look at. People that have some type of, not even management background, but just a background of jobs that required organization, that required some type of critical thinking, stuff like that. Again, the guys that were in my class with me, they're from, one guy was ex-TSA, one guy he worked at a Chewy factory where they make the granola bars. It was all backgrounds like that. The prior experience in the railroad industry can hurt you, and it can help you. It's kind of a double-edged sword. A lot of guys think that, because you have the experience, you would be preferred over others. Well, that's not exactly the case. the problem that comes with guys with prior experience is bad habits from that other railroad. So the longer that you've been at another railroad with prior experience, it, in my personal opinion, it may hurt you transitioning into a class one, because they're gonna see it as you have X amount of years of experience and you have this way of doing things stuck in your head. It may be difficult for you to switch that and now do it their way, CSX way or the Norfolk Southern way or whatever. So I'm not saying it will, but it may hurt you. Having a little bit of previous experience, limited, like I did, I had about a year and a half. I think it helped me a little bit because it shows that I kind of understand things. I've been around this stuff, but I haven't had like bad habits, develop and stuff like that. Again, it was a learning curve because there was a lot of habits I had to break. The way that Norfolk Southern wants things done compared to what I did before. But anyway, so there was a question about, prior experience, help me or hurt me. It's kind of a double-edged sword, to be honest with you. It's not required because they put you through all the training. So anyways, getting back on the track of things, you submit your application, and then if they're interested in you right now, the way they do it is they do it all online and all virtual. In years past, we used to have these hiring sessions to where if you submitted your application for the position, they would invite you to a hiring session. Now this hiring session would seat about 200 people at a hotel somewhere. They would come out and they would do a big presentation on the job, on the railroad, on the company and stuff like that. And then if you were still interested at that point, you would stay. If you weren't, you could leave. And if you're interested, you would stay and then go through on the spot interview, and then you would kind of know, like, either that day or a day or two after if you were selected to pursue the position. Now they've done away with that. They do a lot more critical selection virtually on their applicants. So what happens is you have to take this test. And it's almost like taking an ASVAB test for the military. If you've taken an ASVAB test for the military, you will kind of understand how this test goes. But it's a test that will go over basic math, reading comprehension, and mechanics. The math is not that hard. It's all common knowledge math: addition, subtraction, decimals, reading charts, filling in missing information, using real basic formulas. It's nothing crazy. And then you do a reading comprehension question or a run of questions where it's, you read a paragraph and it asks you what was the main purpose of this paragraph, or what does this paragraph mean, or and stuff like that. So it was like that style of questions. Mechanical aptitude questions where, like, your basic, if this gear is shown spinning this way or what direction will the other gear spin, stuff like that. Basic things to show that you have some type of mechanical aptitude. And then from there was a personality assessment. You would go through a bank of 50 questions or so and be like, I agree, disagree, I'm neutral, strongly agree, stuff like that, to different sentences that they would provide you, or different statements. And then from there, if you were selected to go on from there, they would invite you to do a virtual interview. Now, the first round of virtual interviews, they send you a link to go to this website, and it's 5 recorded videos that are questions to you, and then you have to, like, video yourself responding and answering those questions. It's 5 questions. It doesn't take very long. You submit those, and then if they're still interested in you, you go ahead, or you get invited for an actual interview. Now, the actual interview, again, for me, was virtual. Now, some guys said they had in-person interviews. I didn't. I had a virtual interview that was done over Skype. And it was the hiring manager from HR, and it was the division superintendent. It lasted maybe 10 minutes, and that was it. They asked me pretty much the same exact questions that I'd already previously answered, just to see if I was consistent and I wasn't, like, just bullshitting or making stuff up on the fly. And then they asked me a few other filler questions in between. The division superintendent asked me a question or two, and that was kind of it. And at the end of it, they said, okay, well, thank you for your time, and you'll know within the next few days if you get an email with an offer, if you get an email, with a decline. And I had my offer 3 hours later the same day I did my interview, which was pretty cool. So after that, they send you an official email that says, congratulations, you've been extended a conditional, they make that very bold, a conditional offer of employment. Basically meaning that, yes, we are offering you a position upon your completion of several things. One is a background check, the physical check, and then also CT school. While you're in CT school, you're still on a conditional offer of employment, and while you're in training, you're still technically on a conditional offer of employment. Anything that you do and mess up, like, you can get taken off the job for and sent home. And you're not protected by the union, but we'll get into that. So you schedule your after you get the offer, they send you a bunch of information in there about the next steps coming up, and they send you a link to put in to reserve a time to go to medical. And then once you do that, you get a link to schedule your background check. Now, I did the background check first, and then I did medical. The background check is simple, it's easy, as long as you have a clean record. Some of the things that will get you kicked, not disclosing something, because they will find it, because they do a federal level background check. If it's anything, if you just don't disclose it and don't think it's important, even though how minor it might be, it could affect your ability to get hired. Felonies is a no-go, as far as I know. Certain misdemeanors, depends on how long ago they were, that'll get you taken out. Anything traffic related, depending on the severity of it and how long ago it was, will get you your application denied. Obviously, big offenses. I think DUIs, I think it's a 5-year cap on it. I'm not exactly sure. I forget what it was. I think it was no DUIs within the past 5 years, and you could still be considered eligible. They'll ask you straightforward, like, if there's nothing that you just like, because when you put in your job application, there's areas for you to say, hey, like, have you ever had a record? If you did, what was it? Explain, stuff like that. If you didn't disclose anything then, they give you a chance to do it when you're actually at the police department doing the background check, because you have to come in, you have to give them copies of your ID, birth certificate, diploma, stuff like that, different forms of identification. If you have a passport, they'll ask for a copy of that, and they'll ask you if you need to disclose anything that you haven't previously put on, and you say no, or you say yes, or you ask questions about stuff, and then you move on from there. The background check took me about 2 weeks to get through until I got my letter to schedule medical. Now, the medical process is a pain in the butt. It's just the way it is. It doesn't matter for new hires. It doesn't matter if it's people that have been in the job for 20 years. Medical for Class 1 railroads can be a real pain. I got held up for about 2 months on medical for a bruised knee from a year ago, all because I didn't disclose it, because I didn't think it was any real big issue, because it really wasn't. And when they did my medical background record check for the past year, it popped up on their radar. So I had to go and get doctor's notes from the doctor saying I was cleared, then submit them, then wait them to be processed, and then apparently there was missing information. I had to go back to the doctors and get more thorough documentation that basically says I'm fine, it was a bruise, I'm okay. But they're very nitpicky on medical. You can have issues, but as long as they don't greatly affect your ability to do the job, and you're okay, shouldn't be a problem. But so it took me about 2 months. So this all started back in April of 2019. I got my conditional offer May 3rd. So everything kind of went pretty quick. Like, I submitted my job application. I got a notice about a week and a half later to do the first step of the videos. And then about 4 days later, I got, because I had already done my test from a prior application, so they just reused my test from the other one. So I didn't have to retake the test again. And then I got, about 4 days later, I got the invite to do the interview, the actual interview. And then that wasn't for like another week. And then I got my offer, so it was May 3rd. So it's been about a month and a week by then. And then by the time I cleared medical, we were getting into the beginning of August. So it took a good amount of time to get that medical process cleared up, because until you clear that, they can't really do anything with you. They can't schedule you for nothing. You're just in limbo, just hanging out. So I cleared medical. I got an email stating that, pretty much, congratulations on successfully passing all the pre-employment stuff. We'll let you know when a class is coming up. And that's pretty much where it dropped off. So there's been guys, and if you go back to your profile, you can see your status. And I got marked hired August 3rd or 4th or something like that. But it doesn't really mean much. There's no definitive start date yet. So my biggest, thing that I can tell people going through it is don't tell your current employer that you're getting another job until you know when you actually start with Norfolk Southern or whatever railroad you go to, because you might sit as hired for 3 or 4 months yet until something happens. For me, I had completed everything at the beginning of August, and then beginning of September, it was the first week of September, I got a email saying that, hey, it's time to go to Georgia. You've been selected to start your class. Unfortunately for me, I had a lot of stuff going on in August, September, and I couldn't go. However, I was able to postpone it. They give the option to say, hey, you know what, I need to wait for the next one, you know what I mean? And it won't affect your employment with the railroad. Now, the only problem is, though, is that you don't know when the next one's going to be. So you may have to wait a lot longer. Now, for the class that they just ran, they ran a big class back in September. They ran a standard 30, 35 person class it was. The class that I'm in now is only a 6-person class. And what happened there was, after I'd kind of declined the first time, I asked a bunch of questions. And don't be afraid to ask questions to who's emailing you and stuff like that, because it's always better to ask a lot of questions than not at all. And I was like, hey, you know what, if I decline or postpone now, what's going to happen, and stuff like that. And they're like, well, what you'll be, your application status will be just put in holding for the next class, but we don't know when that's going to be. We're probably not going to run another conductor class until the end of 2020. So, okay, all right, I guess I'll wait that long, you know what I mean? But then in February, just out of the blue, I wasn't expecting it at all, they said, hey, you're going down to Georgia, February 24th. I'm like, all right, let's go, let's do it. And they give you I got about 3.5 weeks ahead of time notice. But they do give you at least a minimum of 2 so that you can arrange yourself and put in your notice to your employer and stuff like that and get yourself ready to go down. So that's a little bit about the hiring process, how it's laid out, the different steps you go through, from submitting the job application to the few different things you do prior, leading up to the interview, and then going through the post-hiring process, all the still pre-employment stuff, the medical stuff like that. The only thing I can say is just make sure that everything's organized, that you have everything detailed, there's nothing missing. Make sure that your paperwork's filled out entirely, because you're going into a job that requires great accuracy and a lot of paperwork accuracy, and if they see you messing up on a job application, they're probably not going to consider you. It's just the nature of the job. They will look at stuff like that. But up until then, you just kind of walk through the process until they give you a date to go down. Now, I will say, though, right now, we're not really hiring anymore. With all the PSR, the precision scheduled railroading stuff going on, we're probably, in my opinion, from what I can understand, we're probably going to be the last conductor class for a little bit. Probably not until the end of the year. I'm not saying that on behalf of Norfolk Southern. They may run one in the fall, who knows, but I just don't see them doing it. Because we specifically, the 6 of us specifically, got hired for Harrisburg because they're so short of people in the division. So from Harrisburg Consolidated Terminal, the 3 yards up there, and Lancaster, wherever else in the division they need people, that's what us 6 got hired for specifically. They're not. I've seen no job openings for conductors anywhere else. So if you want to get into railroading, I'd probably maybe try to skip this year as we try to kind of get out of this weird lull we're in. And once things pick up again, it might be a time to get in. Yeah. So that's a little bit about Class 1, hiring process. Again, with Class 3s is a little bit different. It's going to be like almost a regular hiring process to where you put in a job application, go in for an interview. They say they'd like to bring you on, when can you start, and then you go from there. But because of how structured Class 1s are with their training programs and stuff like that, it's a lot more regimented. It's a lot more structured. You just don't walk onto the job. So, yeah, that's about it for that. That is kind of the gist of the railroad hiring process. If you have any other questions, don't be afraid to shoot me a message, comment below. You know the deal. It's YouTube. So, yeah, this week went by quick. It was our last week. We started RCO training on Friday, so we're learning how to run locomotives and run trains and stuff like that. So it's going to be an exciting next week, and then we get to go home Friday. I'm ready. Been away from home way too long, so I'm looking forward to getting back. Yeah, it's weird. The conductor classes were about 3 weeks, and they added this 4th week on, which is cool. I mean, it's not bad. We get more training, and we get to qualify an extra step once we get back to the division. But just looking forward to getting home. So again, that's it for this video. See you on the next one.